Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss Donald Trump's latest backing down from his insane trade policy. Try to make sense of why he might have U-turned this time. But first, for daily news and commentary, please hit the subscribe button to stay notified. So, Donald Trump has watered down his tariff policy yet again. Earlier this week, there were rumours he might pause them for 90 days to give countries time to negotiate. I had to do a hasty re-record of a video, if you remember, because of it. No, not happening. Absolutely absurd. Sometimes you have to take your medicine. Trump and his cabal absolutely rubbishing the idea. Then Trump U-turns. What happened to that medicine, Trumpy boy? Was it a little bit bitter? Yesterday, the higher rate tariffs were implemented. More losses in the stock market, sell-off of American bonds, and although the focus is on China's retaliatory tariffs, they are taking more action than that. One of China's measures seemed to include an instruction to banks to reduce dollar purchases. Now, Trump wants the Fed to cut interest rates. Nothing unusual in that. All governments, all the time, want central banks to cut interest rates. It makes investing cheaper and helps boost growth. But central banks are charged with keeping inflation under control, and this move by China would actually have moved the odds in favour of an interest rate rise, not cut. And so yesterday, after the tariffs had been live for a few hours, President Trump announced a pause on the tariffs, except for China and others who retaliated, for 90 days. Now, this doesn't mean the tariffs have gone away, just the ones which were levied yesterday. The end result is that with the exception of China, Canada, the EU, maybe Mexico, I'm not sure, because they didn't retaliate, there are 10% on goods imported to the USA from every other country. Trump said that if you don't retaliate, he will reward you. Couple of problems with this statement. First of all, a 10% tariff is not a reward, especially when there is an expectation that you are going to sign whatever trade deal he puts in front of your nose in the next few weeks. Second, most countries have a trade surplus with the USA and so already had the 10% tariffs in place, including the UK and Penguin Island. Not only did we not retaliate, but we actually buy more American goods than we sell to them. Where was our reward? Now, this was a knee-jerk reaction from Trump because he panicked, or there was concerted pressure on him from his inner circle who panicked. And how do I know this was or how do I strongly suspect this was a knee-jerk reaction, not something planned as part of some 4D chess move? Well, several things, but not the least of which is that Trump announced the decision at the same time as his trade representative, Jameson Greer, was taking part in a congressional hearing to explain why the tariffs had to carry on and there should not be a pause. Had Trump planned it, his trade rep would have been briefed and the announcement made before he began taking questions. So it's abundantly clear that as Greer went into the hearing, there was no intention to change the tariffs at all, and someone was badgering Trump at that very moment to change course. Why would he throw his own trade rep under the bus? Now, there is a slight other tangent you could go on this. I gather at least one senior Republican is being investigated over the potential for buying a dip with insider knowledge. Now, it is possible that when Trump made his decision, before announcing it to the world, tipped the nod to a few loyal people so that they could buy shares cheap, knowing that they would then go up after he announced it, which of course they did. So there is the potential for that. But that won't be the explanation for why he made this decision. Because if he cared about making money for his mates, he wouldn't have initiated this trade policy in the first place, because it has actually made them all poorer, right? But it is possible that in the moment that he decides to make that decision, he tells a few people that if they buy a load of shares in certain companies now, that in a couple of hours it's going to go up quite a lot, right? So we'll see what happens. Nothing will ultimately come of it because Trump has been getting rid of people who investigate corruption, for example. But we could still know about it because unusual purchases do show up. But anyway, that'll not be the reason why Trump made the decision. So what worries might have caused him to have a change of heart, as the press are putting it, or U-turning, as it's usually described? Well, I discussed yesterday how Americans would be getting a very rude awakening as soon as current stocks of cheap imports had to be replaced by ones imported after the tariffs. Now, I gather that the tariffs are only actually payable for goods which are dispatched after the tariffs come online. So not goods already in transit, because that would have been a bit of an arsehole, wouldn't it? So given that it from Southeast Asia to America takes like a good couple of weeks at least, you would think it would have taken a few weeks for the stocks to dwindle and for imports coming in dispatched after the tariffs to have that impact hit. So it would be a few weeks before anyone noticed. But when they did, there would be no mistake in it. Perhaps Trump does not yet feel his attempted dictatorship is strong enough to face down the anger which would result. Then there's the risk of pressure to raise rather than lower interest rates. Now, of course, he could try and strong-arm the Fed. He's even talked about just replacing people there with his own people. Some say that's illegal. That hasn't stopped him so far. But the consequence of getting his way and forcing an interest rate cut where fiscal sensible monetary policy would dictate you actually have to rise them, there would then be a risk of hyperinflation. Perhaps even someone got the sock puppet out and explained that when he said now is a great time to move your business to America, no, it's not actually. It's actually a terrible time, because Trump has forced every manufacturing business in America to pay a premium on doing business, even in America. They will have to pay the biggest import taxes in the world on any materials, equipment or components that they need to import. Not everything is available to buy in the US market, nor could it ever be. I mean, it's huge, sure, but it can never supply itself with everything it needs. America cannot become self-sufficient on everything. For example, he has made it more expensive to build cars in America. He hasn't just made car imports into America more expensive. He's made American-built cars more expensive in America because of the tariffs on car parts. If you really wanted to energize the American car market, you might put tariffs on car imports, but you would exclude car parts from the tariffs. Now, there are some exemptions on these tariffs, sure, but there are still plenty of things that a lot of businesses need to import, which Trump has levied a huge tax on. Even at 10%, that's huge. Then there's the exports. Now, you are likely to want to export to if you're a big company, right, you produce a lot of stuff, you are likely to want to export to one of the markets which America mostly exports to. But three of them, China, Canada and the EU, have applied retaliatory tariffs on some goods. The US and China are in a duel to the death. There's talk of 80% of all trade between them being knackered by this trade war. So if you have a company which would like to sell to China, forget about setting up in the USA. And China is the third largest importer in the world. I know it has quite a lot of protectionist, attitudes, but it is still the third largest importer in the world. So there's only just behind the EU. So there's lots of businesses would want to sell to China. So even if you wanted to mostly sell to the American market, but have some sales in China, you would still be better off setting up shop not in America, some country with the 10% tariffs. That could actually make some companies based in America right now move to a different country if this is going to be long term. It shouldn't be possible to be this stupid and hold any public office, let alone the highest. Frankly, the sort of business which can thrive under Trump's regime needs the following properties. It needs to be almost exclusively supplying the American market or countries who are not raising retaliatory tariffs. And it needs to be able to source all of its raw materials and components, as well as staff, entirely from America. Because even 10% tariffs make you uncompetitive if you're based in America. And in terms of immigration, work visas and so on, Trump is cancelling visas just because they've supported Palestine or something, right? So you cannot even trust that your workforce, if it's a migrant workforce, is stable. You would need to source everything from America. And even the low or zero tariffs which exist on some imports still, because there are exemptions, that could change. With Trump's chaotic presidency, you cannot bank on it. He's threatening pharmaceuticals with tariffs. There's supposed to be an international agreement. You do not do that for obvious moral reasons. Now, there will be companies which can match that business model. But they were probably already set up in America in the first place. If you are sourcing all of your resources from America and you are selling almost exclusively to America, you're probably already in America. So this continues to make no sense. Trump has clearly backed down. There's no strategy behind implementing the higher tariffs and then pausing them a few hours later. It hasn't worked to bring countries to the negotiating table. They were already there. Trump was boasting at the weekend about how governments were kissing his ass on the phone. So he already, by his own admission, had people clamouring to talk trade deals, right? There's literally nothing to be gained from refusing to pause on Monday and then pausing on Wednesday. He's backs down. Something has spooked him. The question is what? And this is an important question for investors especially. It's interesting for me, but it's important for investors because they need to try and judge what happens now. Has Trump realised he's gone too far? In which case, there should not be a return to the whack-eye tariffs briefly implemented yesterday, other than for China, of course. Or was this just a case of Trump listening to someone who persuaded him in the moment and he will change his mind back again later? Perhaps if he doesn't like the way the trade talks are going, or just for whatever other reason. Whatever this is about, bringing security to investors, it is not. There are three things which could happen next. First, he can do deals with countries and then leave their tariffs low or remove them altogether. That is what investors would like to see, I guess. I get the strong impression Trump wants to leave at least the 10% tariffs in place everywhere. So America, after this, if Trump gets his way, will still have the highest import taxes in the world, right? And then you think to yourself, so if he's even prepared to get rid of the tariffs in return for a favourable trade deal, why didn't this pause include a reduction for countries already on 10%? See, they're wanting to negotiate too. I'm not sure about the penguins. They don't seem to care. But everyone else has said they're keen to talk, including Canada, the EU and China, who are punching back. So the fact that Trump gave no tariff relief to the countries where America already has a trade surplus, along with what he's been saying for years, suggests to me he wants to leave at least the 10% in place. He wants the tariffs for revenue. Second, he can reinstate a whole slate of the tariffs after the 90 days because he's unlikely to be able to conclude deals with dozens of countries in 3 months. Unless, of course, he does actually expect them to just sign whatever he puts in front of them. Third, he could reinstate some of the major tariffs before the 90 days in like a hissy fit or something. And because all three are plausible, you can't view America as a stable place to do business. And even investors who generally know what they're doing, I mean, there's lots of gamblers on the stock markets, but even the ones who generally know what they're doing, I mean, they're probably just gambling at this point because you do not know what Trump is going to do. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later.